I pulled the star.
No! We're talking tarot. You cannot make this up.
Don't you just love like the magic of not just really tarot, but just this wonderful matrix world that we live in?
As Biddy Tarot's Brigit Esselmont breaks down the cards.
It's all designed to serve us in some way.
From the wisdom within them.
These cards and these insights are like little signposts, little green lights along the way that kind of just gently nudge us into the right direction.
To turning this age-old spiritual practice into a modern-day superpower.
So I think if you can go into like tarot and reading cards for yourself with that kind of attitude of like, yeah, let's find some edges. Like, how can I keep growing? Like, to me, that feels like you're in the most open state to really receive what it is that you need to receive. Cards do not lie in the end.
On an all-new Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers, a podcast dedicated to those seeking a more fulfilled and purposeful life through thought-provoking conversation, spiritual exploration, and authentic connections. The intentional movement has begun, and if you found yourself here, you are a part of it. Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers starts now. Hi, Brigit. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. I am really, really excited, like we talked about right before I pushed record, to talk to you today, especially because, as most of our listeners know, most of our viewers know, I don't do a lot of prep before we start these conversations, as I like to keep them as intuitively flowing and conversational as possible. Yet I do a little bit to get myself in the mindset of who I'm about to talk to. And so as I was doing my hair and makeup right before we jumped on, I was listening to a few old interviews that you had. This interview I think was 5 years ago, and you were talking to the host about, she asked you a question about a street she lived on, and the title of the street translated to the word King of Cups, or to the tarot card King of Cups. And so you guys started to talk about that, and I thought, wow, what an interesting way to start today's conversation. Let me just pull a tarot card from my handy dandy deck here that I don't use very often. I just use it kind of as a fun little tool for myself. And I'm going to pull one card to start our conversation. And the card I pulled was the King of Cups. Like, you cannot make this up. That's the best thing about spirituality is, like, some people might call it coincidences, but I don't think it is. So, like, let's just jump off with this. Welcome to the show. And why the hell am I pulling the King of Cups card? What does it mean? Let's go with it.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. And don't you just love like the magic of not just really tarot, but just this wonderful matrix world that we live in that can connect us through different timelines, through different space, and create these like magical connections. I think that's fantastic. King of Cups. Well, I always like to invite you to find the meaning of that card. And it's funny because a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh, Brigit, tell me, what does this card mean? Have I got it right? I'm like, well, actually, it's more powerful if you start to tap into that card, because you start to connect with your own intuition, your own inner wisdom. So I'm going to invite you, Courtney, have a look at that card and look at the imagery of that card and just tell me what stands out to you, what really speaks to you in this moment.
Well, in this moment, the first thing that spoke to me was his crown, and I have the Rider-Waite deck. So I have like the original, version, and it just really stood to me, and it's kind of like standing tall and proud. And I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that we needed to tap into our own intuition because, I did take one of your courses ages ago. And that is one of the things that I like about tarot and all these decks is like that we can read into it and use our own intuition. And then I get kind of hung up on like the whole meaning and like I go back to the book and look, what is this supposed to mean thing? So I like that you're like, no, let's see what this card means to you. And to me, it just is a symbol of power. That's what it looks like for me. That's what it's telling me right now, that, that you're in charge and that it's a symbol of power right now.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. And what I love too about the King of Cups is the cups element is like connected to water. And also that's really about being powerful and grounded in your emotional self. And so, how can you really show up in a way that channels that king energy, which is like, strong and the crown and so on, but also in a way that feels so emotionally stable, secure, grounded and connected. And when you're channeling that kind of energy, you're at the top of your game. So I think what a wonderful card to bring into your day today.
That is amazing. And I love that you said that, because literally last night, I had a hard day yesterday. It just was, we have those moments in our time. And that's the thing is, even doesn't matter how spiritual you are, the practices you take, whatever, you have ups and downs. It's just our human existence. And I had just one of those days yesterday, and I was just feeling down. And by the end of the day, I had tears streaming down my face for no reason. I was watching, my husband and I were catching up on The Handmaid's Tale, and it was like emotional. And I just started like crying. No reason. Like real reason. And I realized that there was a longing that I had in me. And I was just longing for this sense of peace. And I went to bed asking the universe to bring me a sense of just inner peace and wisdom. And literally this morning, I woke up, and when I pulled up my Instagram, like, the bad habit that I have of doing that we're not supposed to, one of the things came up, and it's, there's a little, one of those word scrambles where it's like, find the word, see what it says. And the first word that you find is like your theme for the day or whatever the theme was. And literally the only word that I could see was peace. Like these things happen all the time. And now that you're saying that and thinking about this power symbol and being rooted in the water of the King of Cups, that's another symbol to me of peace. This water, I'm looking at the card, there is a sense the blue brings in that peace, that element. And I think that like when we tap into things like tarot and stuff, it really speaks to us on what we're going through in any moment. And now I wonder, because you are the expert in tarot, how much of what we read into cards is projection versus what the universe or spirit wants us to see? Because I can read peace into this and power if I want. But is that what it's really telling me, or is that what spirit wants us to hear?
I actually think, there's certainly a healthy projection and there's an unhealthy projection. So when we think about maybe an unhealthy projection, might be when you actually go and you pick up your cards and maybe you're in a heightened state. You desperately want to get a certain answer from your cards. And so you're projecting this expectation or desire or what you want to see in those cards. And then you can start to, see the things that only you want to see, and you're making stories up, and you're getting like, the 10 of Swords, which is a terrible card with all swords in one's back, and going, the relationship's going to be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine, right? So that's kind of that unhealthy projection. But for me, I see like, yes, there is actually a really healthy projection, which is the beautiful thing about tarot is all of the imagery, the symbolism, the stories in the cards, it all serves to bypass our conscious mind and help us to drop into our subconscious, which is where all of like our fears, our doubts, but also our desires, our dreams, all of that is stored really in the subconscious. And so tarot really allows us to go much deeper than we can just by thinking through a problem or thinking, what should I feel like today, right? But instead we're seeing symbols that access a much deeper part of ourselves. So I see like with tarot, it's a real combination. So you're almost like projecting and seeing what you need to see in those cards. It's helping you tap into your own inner wisdom and subconscious mind. It's also connecting us to a much greater power, which, we can call God, universe, whatever it might be. And that is what is really supporting us in being our absolute highest and best selves. And then, of course, there are like traditional meanings of the tarot cards, which have been gathered and evolved over hundreds and hundreds of years that also play a really important role in those cards. Because just like we talked about today, the king energy and then the cup/water energy, that comes from very ancient and deep wisdom that has evolved over the centuries. So it's kind of this beautiful culmination of different things. I think what's tricky is sometimes, like you might go on to TikTok, you see the tarot readers on TikTok. And some of them doing a fantastic job, and kudos to them. Others you can see are just kind of like winging it and making it up as they go. And I'm a real advocate for balancing our intuitive meanings with our traditional meanings, because it does really respect where tarot comes from.
So how do we start to do that? Because that was what I was going to ask. I mean, I know the pictures speak to our subconscious mind. Our subconscious speaks in that way to us. But how do we take, those traditional elements of something like tarot or, any sort of spiritual practice and infuse our own intuitive nature so that it makes sense but we're not making it like, I feel like there's this. It's hard. It's hard to understand like where you're supposed to draw that line of like letting yourself just go with whatever you're feeling and where you're supposed to pull from like the rules.
It's a really good question. And if I was to approach it from a kind of a really practical perspective, what I share with my students is in between readings, go and read the book. Start learn about the cards, because it's a deck of 78 cards. It's like 78 pages of the book of life. Like there is so much richness in each and every one of those cards. And there's so much to learn even just by reading and understanding what each card represents, because that shows us a lot about what life is really about. But then when it comes to doing a reading, put the book away and instead really allow your intuition to come into flow. Excuse me. Because what will happen is all of the things that you've read in the book, they will be there. You can just trust and know that knowledge is there. You don't need to rely on the book as you're doing a reading. But by putting that book away, you're going to be integrating both your intuition and your logic or what you know of the cards. Yeah.
I mean, I'm almost thinking of it like, a surgeon, he's not going to look up in the textbook everything he learned about the body when he's in the, doing surgery. He's going to intuitively know what to do, but it's going to be so rooted in him, the foundational elements of what needs to happen, that it's going to become a second nature. So essentially, if we're reading the book or something like that, when we're not practicing the cards, then it's just going to give us that element of, knowledge to pull on to support our intuitive feelings when we're reading it.
Yes. And, doing things like learning the systems behind the cards is really important. You probably experienced this when you were taking one of my courses. The way that I teach is to not just dive into what each and every card means, but understanding things like the 4 elements and what they really represent and what they feel like, and even having the experience of the 4 elements. Go and experience water for a week. And it's rainy season here, so there's a lot of water going on, and you kind of experience that, or even a raging river or just a gentle stream. Water has its own energy. And so even just going and experiencing things like the 4 elements of earth, fire, water, and air will just give you a deeper appreciation when you start to see these things come up in the tarot cards. It's the same with the numbers. Just learning basic numerology can just really open up a whole lot of access to 40 of the cards, because you've got the 4 suits that are all numbered ace through to 10. So if you understand your elements, you understand your numbers from just 1 to 10, then you've already got 40 cards sorted in one go.
Yeah, there's just so much of spirituality that you can find in just one card. You could take the numerology, you could take the, the nature, you could take all these different aspects of all these different practices and see it within one card.
Yes. Yeah. And, say even with the King of Cups, some things that I love to do, with tarot, is it would be great to have a conversation with the King of Cups. So one, you could almost have a conversation and journal it as if you are speaking with the King of Cups. And what is it that he wants to let you know? What advice does he have? You might ask him questions and see how he would respond. You can then also turn the tables to where you become the King of Cups. And how would I be acting and feeling and responding to things, and starting to really absorb it on that level. these are all ways to deepen our real experience with the cards. So again, it goes way beyond just what you read on a website or in a book, but you start to feel it in your entire like energy field. And that's when things become a whole lot more powerful and embedded, really.
Well, isn't that anything like any sort of spiritual practice? If we're really starting to tune in and tap into our intuition, tarot is a great way, a great tool we can use. But essentially, no matter what we're trying to do, if we're on our spiritual journey, is tap into that feeling. That's how we feel. Intuition, yes, there are the different clear senses that different people may experience, but for the most part, your intuition is going to be a feeling, like a nudge, a push, like a knowing. And that's essentially what, the cards can help prompt in you, but it's a tool to access your intuition.
Yeah, it's funny because when I first started reading tarot, like way back when I was about 17, 18 years old, a very long time ago, I thought then like, oh, you've got to be like really psychic to read tarot. And I would go and I'd practice my psychic abilities, and it just all felt very clunky. It didn't really come together very well. But what I've realized now is that actually I think tarot is the perfect tool to develop our intuition. You don't have to, like, intuition isn't a prerequisite to read tarot. It's almost the other way around. Tarot is like a little bit of a training wheels to really start to fine tune your intuition and have a tangible, thing. Like you can look at the card and that's helping you prompt your intuition. It's kind of bridging this space between the physical and the tangible and the more like etheric and spiritual worlds, which makes it really powerful.
Oh, I just was like looking really closely. I'm like, did you pull the King of Cups too right there when you pulled up that card? It's like that would have been crazy. That's so funny. Oh my goodness. That would have been really funny. But yes, so like, what do you do when you are searching for answers? Because I feel like a lot of people are first drawn to things in spirituality, into readings, into tarot, because they want an answer or they want a knowing, and they're looking at it as like a fortune telling device. And I know, and that that's not really what it is. Yet that was one of the things that drew me towards it, and I've used it in times when I wanted answers, and I can read an answer into anything, we can make our mind believe whatever we want it to say. So how do you suspend that, like wanting it to give you a certain answer so that we can absorb the wisdom of it?
Yes. So this is something that's really, really important, but often so overlooked when someone's about to do like a tarot reading for themselves. So often you can go like, oh, I just need an answer. Quick shuffle, pull a card. Oh my God. Okay. Take it or leave it, and then carry on with the day. But what I say like to my students is treat yourself like a client. You wouldn't rush through and just do a quick 5-minute reading for a client. You would take the time to really first create a sacred space. And so what that means is just clearing yourself of the day's energy and bringing back your focus and grounding your emotions, just like the King of Cups, and finding that real center back in yourself. And even it can be as simple as just like closing your eyes and taking a few deep breaths and bringing yourself into presence. If you feel called, you can light a candle, you can hold crystals, you can do incense, like you can choose what that looks like. But so long as you create a special and almost like magical space before your reading, so that you are going into that reading as a really clear channel for intuitive insight, and that you are open to receive. This is a big thing. If we go into like pulling cards going, okay, come on, I've got to make sure this relationship works, like, I'm desperate for it to work. I'm never going to find love if this doesn't work, right? And so if you catch yourself in that state, it's really important to just clear that out. Maybe it's a quick like journaling, just get all those thoughts and emotions out so that you can come in as an empty vessel and be open to receive whatever messages are there for you in the cards. So I've had plenty of times I go in going, oh, I would really like something good here. And then the cards will show me something very different. But I'm open to receive that message and go, okay, well, clearly all of this is here to serve me in some way. So what is it that I need to see in these cards, even if it's a challenging message, that's actually going to help me towards my greater goal. And yeah, just it really is that openness and preparing oneself so that when you do go in, you can receive those messages.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of times when we're going to something like tarot or we're going to get some sort of reading of some sort, it's usually, and I actually have talked about this and even in the case with manifestation, we're like looking for this outcome that we are so attached to. Usually it's not, for the most part, we're not going to the tarot card every day, which probably maybe we should to get more familiar with it. Pull a card a day, do a journaling exercise, things like that to make you more familiar and more receptive to it. But so often, I think we search for these things in a time of like wanting an answer, wanting in desperate need, really holding on to what we want. And so then I think we're closing ourselves off to the messages that we really need to receive. So how are different, like, how do we start to get into that space of receptivity so that we can, not just go to it in our times of crisis?
Yeah, I think actually the daily tarot card is a really beautiful way to stay in regular connection with yourself, because a daily card practice can just simply look like 5 minutes at the start of your day just to take a breath, close your eyes, tune in. How often do we even just do that, right? It's very rare. And then just, take your cards and you can ask questions like, what is it that I need to know today? Or what energy can I tap into? What's one thing I need to manifest my goals today? Something like that. And just taking that time to pull a card and then reflect on, okay, well, what does that mean for me? And then I think, oftentimes we get the insights, but we also need to match that with action. And so when we receive the insights, what is it that you're going to do differently today? How can you have a day of intention and purpose and really shape the day the way that you want it and that feels most connected to you? So let's just say, okay, I've just pulled 3 of Cups. Now, if this was my daily card, I might go, well, it's really sweet. There's like some women who are gathering, they're having fun. What's interesting is I have a lunch today with a friend who is heading off on an overseas adventure. There's a few of us women there. So great. This is a reminder for me to just relax into that. Because I sort of think like, oh, it's normally a work day and I feel a little bit guilty for going and having like a fun lunch. But actually, this is a great reminder to just be fully present. So I could set an intention here just to be fully present, fully embracing of just that wonderful freedom and friendship shared by women. And that's actually the priority today, not getting my task list, 100% complete, for example. So you can see how powerful that can be. It just creates more intentionality in one's day.
I love that. So do you find that when we actually take action on the messages that we're getting, that the messages become clearer and more accurate and that we do start to receive more?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all designed to serve us in some way. And I almost see like these cards and these insights are like little signposts, little green lights along the way that kind of just gently nudge us into the right direction, and a direction that is in alignment with what we truly desire, but also what the universe desires from us, so that we can live to our fullest potential. I know all of that sounds awfully cliche, but it is actually it's very true and very relevant. Like it is really about how can we take. I'm all about efficiency, so I think about what's the most efficient way to get to that ultimate goal? Like instead of like when we kind of wander around aimlessly and we don't really get the information, we can end up like bumping against a wall. It's like being in a maze. But if you can get clarity of like, okay, I'm choosing the path that's most aligned to my highest good, and then these cards can guide you along that way, that feels really yummy and very clear and intentional.
Yeah, because for the most part, we are going to experience life as we are meant to experience. I think, I've had it explained to me, you can go up the mountain or you can go around the mountain. You're still going to be at the top of the mountain. Either way, you're still going to end at the same spot. So something like tarot or, tapping into your intuition can just make that trek a little bit simpler. That doesn't mean that you're going to have it easy. And I think that is one of the big misnomers when it comes to things like getting answers from tarot or tapping into your intuition, is that everything is going to unfold in a simple way. I mean, there's a lot of scary cards that we talk about in tarot that actually, you know, anyone who actually knows, I'm using the word actually a lot. It's my daughter's 4. It's her favorite word right now. She keeps saying actually, like nonstop. So now it's on repeat in my head. I just caught myself. I'm like, actually, like she loves the sound of it. So funny. But, but you know, there's a lot of cards in here that people will get scared of, you know, but when you truly know about the cards, sometimes those scary cards like the Tower card or the Death card are some of the better cards, because then you know that, okay, we're coming to an end. So something amazing can happen, or so the path forward is going to open up for you. So like, I think it's really interesting when we start to like go down the path of like using it as a tool to help us direct where our highest good really is.
Mm. And, you know, it comes back to the simple thing of life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. And, you know, everything is here to serve you, whether it's good, bad, indifferent. So something like a tower, and just, you know, for those of you who are like, what, tower? What is that? That's okay. It's all good. It's like this image in the traditional tarot. It's kind of this big tower and it's struck by lightning, and there's the top that's just blowing off. There's people leaping from the windows. There's flames. It's very dramatic. But what the tower really speaks to is like this kind of chaos and destruction, but it's the tearing down of structures that no longer serve us so that something new can grow. Because we have the Star card that comes after, which is such a beautiful, like new, authentic kind of energy. And I'm sure, you know, like listeners can think of times in their lives when kind of disaster has struck. It's felt very jarring at the time, but it has opened up this portal to something so new and so much more powerful or beneficial to really come through. So yeah, these cards do speak to those times of like, yeah, sometimes you do have to go through the mess and the muck of it all. And from there, that's really where the good things grow. And, you know, actually I'm kind of riffing a little here, but it reminds me, like, I've got 2 daughters, they're 12 and 14, and they're still in that phase where like anything that's kind of hard is like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's hard. I don't want to, you know, exercise is hard. But I think as adults, as you sort of get a bit more life experience, you start to realize that, you know, yeah, like walking up a hill is hard, but it's great because it gets you fit, and, you know, then you're feeling good and healthy and so on. So we learn to actually embrace these kind of hardships and challenges because we know that they actually lead to good things in the long run.
Yeah, I actually had that conversation yesterday that like I was speaking with another woman on the show, and it was just kind of like going through the made her realize that, you know, I can handle anything. I can do hard things. And so I think that's the kind of like the proof is in the pudding as you get older. As you get older, you get the experience to know, you know, I've made it through all these hard things. Like I can do the next hard thing too. So, I mean, that there definitely is that. And it's like, yeah, I don't know if it ever ends, because, well, my daughter's just in the beginning of that at 4 years old, you know, oh, my legs hurt. I don't want to walk anymore. She's still like, yeah, very, very dramatic. The drama. She's like a walking tower card. It's hilarious. But so is there like a collective tarot reading that you ever do? Like, do you see like a tower moment happening like communally like right now? Because it really feels like there's a lot of just like chaos in the world. I mean, I know you're in Australia and I'm here in the States, so I feel it definitely over here. But I mean, globally, it feels like there's a big shift happening.
Yeah, and I think I trust that there's always a shift happening. You know, that is growth and evolution. And actually, I think I was speaking about this to my husband the other day, because you could say that the world is completely messed up and, you know, has no hope. Or you could also say that the world is actually in such a beautiful transformational time right now.
Yeah.
There's I really think that you can read into it whatever you want to read into it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so in some ways, you could almost say any card in the tarot will reflect some aspect of the collective at any one time. Because I do think that we are so multidimensional as humans, as a society, as a collective. Certainly, though, I think I like to pull a weekly card for our community. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it provides just a really nice focal point for the group, for our community to go, okay, well, I'm going to think about this. Actually, I don't know. Oh, I think we're at Ace of Pentacles for this specific week. And so it's really nice to go, okay, well, what does that Ace of Pentacles mean for me? How is that showing up in my own life? What can I draw from that for my own experience? So I do think that there is value in these collective readings because it just helps, again, bring some focus to different energies that are present. But yeah, ultimately, when it comes to like global issues, my point of view is that you can look at it from you can say it's very bad or very good, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you tapped into a really big point. It's like, it's all in perception. And you said this earlier when we just started about this matrix that we're living in. And I've been tapping into that idea quite a bit too. Is like, what is real? Like, we are all creating this reality. We are all creating this perception of what life is around us. And so whether you're looking at cards, tapping into your intuition, or just, listening to like a communal reading, it's like, what are you specifically pulling from it? It's all in our perception. It can be good. It can be bad. It can be non-existent, like there's so much of that. And I think we look so much for the answers, especially in our human sense. Like, I don't know what it is about us that we're always searching, that we want to know the answers. It might be fear-based, possibly, is my feel, because like we want to control outcomes to keep us safe. Yet, I mean, we can see the good and bad in everything. So just like in the tarot, we have the choice to perceive it how we will.
Absolutely. And how you respond to that is also like your choice. You could be like Tower card, oh my God, that's terrible. Oh, everything's messed up. Or you could be like Tower card, yes, okay, what am I going to tear down next? Like, what is no longer serving me? You can either just like go straight into it and like meet it head on, or you can run away from it in fear and resistance. And I can bet, like, when you run away from things, it just takes a lot longer for that to, it'll be present regardless. But if you can meet it head on, moving through that becomes a lot swifter, and you can move on to the next stage of evolution. I think too, actually, just something I want to speak to is like, I think it's important for us to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And
yes,
by that I mean, like, if we think about comfort zones, like when you're in a comfort zone, you're comfortable, you're safe, you're secure, but you're not really growing. You're in a sort of static state. But if you desire growth, if you desire evolution, if you want to be even a higher version of yourself, you're going to have to be pushing that edge of comfort all of the time. And so what that means is you be in a state of discomfort quite a lot of the time as well.
Yes.
And I think, again, it's a choice. Like, do you want to embrace growth and evolution? And if it's a yes, if you want to become an even better version of yourself, well, get ready to get down and dirty with all of like the messiness and the challenges, and move through those challenging processes, knowing that on the other side, you're going to come out a more evolved human. I think that's exciting.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. We talk about that change and growth all the time on the show. So many people get so wrapped up in keeping things the same because the fear of the unknown is uncomfortable. But that is where we should welcome that more. Yet I think we've gotten very cushy especially in our Western societies that we both kind of live in, and in our, we have a very privileged life. I know not everyone has, everyone has their issues, but for the most part, we're living in a pretty privileged state of being in this time period. And so, pushing past those comfort levels takes a lot of work, because we don't have to. I think that's the thing, is like, most people won't unless they're pushed to the point where they have to, it's usually something big happens. They have to have that tower moment to push them into the change versus welcoming it on their own. Yeah. Even when you were talking about it, I'm like, I'm definitely feeling that energy right now. Like, yes, let's go break some stuff, like, it's all, but that can change from day to day. You have to tap into that energy of yourself. And if you can light that fire in you to accept change and lean into it, like the possibilities are endless.
Yes. Yeah. So I think if you can go into like tarot and reading cards for yourself with that kind of attitude of like, yeah, let's find some edges. Like, how can I keep growing? Like to me, that feels like you're in the most open state to really receive what it is that you need to receive. Versus, I think when I speak to people about tarot, oftentimes they'll relay to me like, oh yeah, I had a tarot reading once and it was really good, or it was really bad. Nothing came true. And I think often people are seeing tarot as a bit of like a quick fix. And if you need answers, go and see a tarot reader and they'll give you the answers and you can walk away and, things will be fixed. But this is why I actually really encourage people to, rather than going directly to a reader, why not learn how to read the cards yourself so that you can start to access that own intuition and inner wisdom and allow yourself to be a bit more in the grittiness of it. It's not a quick fix solution, but it's probably a much more sustainable solution because you start to activate intuition, your inner wisdom. You start to activate this part of you that can be open around challenges and, difficult processes and so on. So I think there's just huge advantage to starting to use cards for yourself rather than just relying on someone else to read them for you.
Yeah, it's almost like taking your power back. And I'm wondering if you do something to, help hone your intuition. If you are like doing that daily card pull, does it start to like, let's say you do that and you take a journal and you journal about it every day, or you write down what card you had every day. Will you start to see the storyline play out of your life through those cards? Like they give you little stepping stones along the way?
Yes. It's funny as I've had a number of students say, like, once they do that daily card reading multiple times, they keep track of it. They start to find these stalker cards. So cards that repeatedly show up every time. And I think those types of cards are really interesting, especially if it's part of the major arcana. So there are 22 cards in the deck that are from the major arcana, and they speak more to like these greater spiritual lessons and archetypes that are present in our lives. So if you're seeing, say, the Hermit coming up repeatedly, what does that tell you about, like, is there a lesson that you really need to learn or deepen your experience of? With the Hermit, it might be about taking more time in isolation or just more time on your own, for example. If maybe it's the Sun card, which is such a warm, positive card, and maybe it's about putting yourself out there more and being more extroverted, or having fun even more. So just seeing what the cards that keep popping up are kind of like they're trying to get your attention and go, hey, you haven't quite figured me out yet. So drop in a little bit more. I think it's a wonderful way of just building up that intentionality and then dialing in the intuition a lot more.
I'm curious, is there a card that you've never pulled?
Oh, well, after 25 years now of reading tarot, I'm pretty solid with the deck. But I've got to tell you, it is interesting because I would say maybe it was about like 7 to 10 years ago. By that point, I had done a lot of different I've done a lot of readings, like thousands of them. But it was the Seven of Swords. I remember seeing that card going, I don't think I've ever really seen this card. Or maybe it was a Five of Swords, one of those. It's like, what is this? I think sometimes there are cards that like to just stay hidden in the deck, don't want to pop out.
Well, I was thinking that because when you were talking about like the major arcana, it sounds like, those are the bigger spiritual lessons that we are going to experience in our life. And I think all of us have, we're not all going to experience every single spiritual lesson awakening that we need to have. I think we come down to earth and we have our core lessons that we're here to have to master, to experience, to evolve through. And so, it's almost like, if you don't pull one of those cards, is that not one of your lessons? That's what was making me think that, like if, we pull these big cards and you get the repetitive card, okay, this is something that we need to look at. But, maybe you don't get a card ever. And that's just like, okay, that's not part of your soul path or your soul plan.
Yeah, at that point in time, perhaps at that sort of phase of life. But yeah, it is interesting to look at like not only what cards are present, but what cards are not present in a particular reading or a series of readings as well. Yeah, it's a neat way of looking at things.
So do you use it to predict things in your life actually, or do you just use it more for the knowledge and the tools to tap into your intuition?
For me, I find that rather than predicting the future, I'd rather create the future. And so what that means for me is I'm clear about what I desire, and I use the cards to help me understand what's happening in this present moment and what are some of the energies that might steer things in a particular direction, because it's when I focus on the present that I can actually change things. If I'm only focused on future, it's as if it's all just happening to you. But when you're more focused on present, what actions you can take, then, it's all happening because of you. You're much more in the driver's seat rather than in the passenger seat. That said, I will say that you can actually, I do find the cards can kind of predict the future in a way, as in it can show you possible pathways. So, for example, if you were trying to figure out a decision, if I did option A or option B, you could ask the cards, what might I experience if I took option A? What might I experience if I took option B? And it can start to paint a picture of where things might head based on present circumstances. And then what's neat is you can make a decision of like, well, which do I want, option A or option B? What feels good to me? And then you go from there. I had an example with my last book. This was back in 2018. And I'd written the book and we were just, we had the book proposal and we were ready to pitch to publishers. And I remember meeting with one publisher and I thought they were like the bee's knees. I thought it was amazing. I thought we had this great connection. And so I was like, yeah, I want to have the deal with them. And I met with the other publishers who were also great, but I felt this like real strong attraction to one of them. Then I pulled the cards and I actually got the 3 of Swords with this publisher. And I was like, that's not right. Surely that's whatever, I've just kind of ignored it. But then one of the other publishers was like, this is going to be such a beautiful collaborative relationship. It's going to be amazing. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Anyway, fast forward a few weeks, I tried to forget about that reading because it was not aligned to what I wanted. Yeah. But I received in all of the proposals from each of the publishers, and lo and behold, that first publisher, who I thought was really wonderful, ended up giving a really dud offer. I was like, oh, my heart was broken. So 3 of Swords is like 3 swords piercing a heart. And I was like, oh, this is, that's not great. But then I ended up taking up with the other publisher and they were fantastic. So that's Running Press and they've just been such a joy to work with. So the cards do not lie in the end. And it was just a wonderful example of how, sometimes we've just got to be a bit more open to receive messages that might be different to what we think things might turn out like. Yeah.
How does it work that the cards are just so accurate? Like, what is it that brings you that accuracy?
Yeah, my feeling is like it happens on a few different layers. That there's on that subconscious layer, like we're tapping into our own intuition, we're connecting in with our own inner selves, but there's also like this super consciousness, which is that collective consciousness. And everyone take it or leave it, wherever I share, but I really feel like we are kind of connected into a bigger matrix, and there's a huge amount of information and knowledge that's available to us when we can connect into that greater super consciousness. And so if you can create yourself as an open vessel for all of that, the tarot cards can support you in that, and then you can start to see not only what's influencing you, but what's influencing outside of yourself and in that greater collective.
Yeah. Because it's like there's part of it that just feels like pure magic. I keep looking at my cards here, and it's just like, part of it feels so magical, yet there's so much truth and knowledge in these. And it's just kind of like, there's a part of me, the left brain side of me, that's like, I want to know. And then there's the right brain side that's just like, just accept, just be open to receive. So it's really fascinating. Yeah. And how do we work with these to really help us create the life that we want to create? We have choice, but they are tools, like you said, to help lead the way. And I think that's what we find a lot with intuition. Before we trust it, it becomes a hindsight thing. Like you said, those cards, like you didn't want to believe that. And you obviously at that point were trusting your intuition, but you still didn't want to believe that card, that Three of Swords was right, until afterwards you're like, okay, you know what? I can't ignore it. And that's what I think happens with anything in our intuition. We can ignore it all we want. Doesn't change the outcome.
Yes. Yeah. And what I do love about intuition,
look what I just
starts as that. Oh, well, do you know what's funny? When you pulled the King of Cups, I pulled a card for our call today, and then I was like, "Oh, it would be cool if the King of Cups came up." But no, I pulled the Star.
No. Oh my goodness! I literally just did that. That's funny.
See, that's the matrix, and we're on the other side of the world from each other, and almost even in different timelines, because it's my Monday, it's your Sunday as we're recording this. But yes, I think it's magic. And, it makes me kind of think about say internet and Wi-Fi. I have no idea how that works, but isn't it wonderful that it can come through the air and and here we are, you can see tiny details of everything. So what if intuition and this greater knowingness was similar to a Wi-Fi, and we can just tap into it and draw that information down? I think it's, exciting.
I love that analogy. Yeah, because it's like we don't question. I don't question how this works. It just does. I don't question how the light works. It does. I mean, I know there's science behind it. But the thing is there's science behind intuition. There's proof behind energy work now. The more advanced we get, the more technology advances, we keep finding different ways to prove that our intuition is real and this energy lives within us. So, I mean, it's just a matter of time until I think everyone's going to adopt to it eventually. And I think what you see now is these conversations working with tarot. I'm sure you've seen it. I mean, your business has probably gotten even bigger lately because it is a popular thing. It's more widely accepted. We don't have to hide it. It's not like, oh yeah, my little spiritual practice. It's like, no, this is what I do. And we can be talking about it in public. Whereas 10 years ago, we might have been a little bit hush-hush about it.
Yes. And I think, earlier when you were talking about change and global shifts, that's something that I definitely connect in with, because I think, for literally hundreds and hundreds of years, we have had to push this down. In fact, we've been, exiled, excluded, even punished. You think of all the witch trials and the burnings at the stake. It's very real. It's still in our collective consciousness of being persecuted for trusting our intuition, for practicing in a way that's, different to, say, science or the norm at that time. But I think what is really happening is now we are reclaiming our power, and we are stepping into more of a balance between that divine feminine and the divine masculine, and letting go a lot of the whole patriarchal systems that have been put in place to kind of control and dampen our spirits. But it's just so wonderful to see more and more people really stepping into a place of just claiming their intuition and their inner wisdom. And in some ways, we can all have different perspectives on social media, but one advantage of that is that it is a way of creating a platform for the fullest expression. Just think of the entire rainbow of people and expressions and ideas that can be presented on there. It's no longer controlled just by a few media outlets. anyone can show up and be who they are, and you can start creating these little collectives around tiny, tiny niches. And I just think that's actually really helping to allow for this fuller expression of who we really are.
Yeah, I do think it's actually helping us embrace things like spirituality. I mean, even my mentor just, 20 years ago when she first started, speaking publicly about her intuition, things like that, she was egged, it wasn't that long ago when people would be persecuted, like you said, for stepping into the space. And now it's like, you can just talk about it at the grocery store and someone's going to say, oh yeah, I believe that, or have some sort of attachment to it in some way. And you're even seeing it on a bigger scale. A lot of business leaders and things like that are talking about how they got to where they were by following that nudge or that intuitive hit or just those little things. So it definitely, I think, has opened up. But I think that's kind of what I was speaking to with like that tower card moment. I feel like we are having a little bit of that tower card moment collectively with the fall of the patriarchal systems. I mean, they haven't fallen. There's, I feel like there's a tug of war really going on, especially over here in the States. But, it's definitely, I'm seeing it, the crumbling is starting. You can feel that. And I think it's a good thing. I think this is welcome. But even if you look back to a couple generations ago, I used to have a friend, she was from Ukraine, and her mom was like, used to read playing deck cards, in the old world country, like that was like, this is so rooted in so many different cultures across so many different areas. Like, it's spirituality, reading cards. It's something that like has been around for a long time but we've suppressed it. So the fact that we can finally bring it to light is, I think, wonderful because it exists for a reason.
Yes. And, it is our birthright. It is so natural and inherent. And it's also such like, I mean, we could do another whole episode on like intuitive entrepreneurship, because I just think intuition in business is like, it's a superpower. It's not like some little, oh, that's nice, very good for you. It's actually just, it elevates business and entrepreneurship in such a huge way. And so I think we're seeing that happening across the board, that, really, it's not even like accepting intuition. It's like, it actually is the most truest, it's part of the most truest versions of ourselves. And I think what we're doing is really returning back to who we really are and starting to see where there are distortions in our society that we have been claimed to be like, normal, and that's the way you do things. But you start to realize, well, actually, what is my source of truth? What is true for me? And returning back into that place that feels more aligned.
Yeah. I think that intuition is the missing piece to most business and most successes in life. And that doesn't mean everything is rosy, and easy, but I think that is the missing link. And when you can tap into that, that's what changes the trajectory for any of us.
Yeah, most definitely. Yes.
Oh my goodness. So how do we learn from you? I know you have courses and books and you are a wonderful teacher. So how do we get in touch and start learning tarot?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, head on over to biddytarot.com and we've got some really great free resources just to get you started. And we have courses that can go from Tarot 101, which is a great place just to get an idea of like, how do I figure out what these cards mean, to how do I actually start doing and reading and getting those answers. And we also go all the way through to we have a Biddy Tarot certification program, which is a wonderful way just to really deep dive into tarot and to build up the skills, the knowledge, the experience, so that you can really feel like a very confident, trusted tarot advisor. That's actually starting in May of this year. So you can definitely learn more about that over at biddytarot.com as well. But yeah, we really do serve folks from the very beginning all the way through to creating a business in tarot, because my goal, my mission is really to be able to bring tarot to just millions and millions of people, because I've seen firsthand just how transformational it can be, and just to normalize it and make it part of our everyday lives.
I love it. I love it. And I love learning from you. Thank you so much for today. I'll put all that information in the show notes. And thank you. Have such a fun lunch with your girlfriends.
I will. Thank you so much, Courtney. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes. And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Brigit Esselmont, for talking tarot with me, all about how it can help us tap into our intuition, trust the universe, and inform our path in life. If you want to work with Brigit, I'll put all the information in the show notes below. And as always, you can find Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers and Intentional Media on our website at CourtneyMyers.com. That's where you find books, courses, and everything else we have going on. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.